The relief station on the edge of the Threener debris field had not been built for children. It had been built for salvage crews, refugees pulled out of cracked habdomes, and the occasional diplomatic envoy who needed somewhere quiet to wait out a ceasefire. Nobody had planned for a Valkyrie cub to be among the survivors pulled from the wreck of the transport Hollow Reed, curled into an emergency locker with his bioluminescent markings flickering distress blue, and no adult of his species anywhere in the manifest. Darian Voss found him there. Darian was not a soldier, not a diplomat, not even technically crew. He was a maintenance contractor who had been reassigned to disaster response because the station was short-staffed and he knew how to pry open a stuck locker without cutting through whatever was inside it. He had pulled apart worse wreckage than this. He had never pulled a child out of it before. The cub, Kaylee's, the manifest would later say, 6 standard years old, no surviving guardians listed, did not cry the way a human child would have. Valkyrie grief expressed itself as a low, arrhythmic pulsing of light across the skin, growing faster and dimmer the more distressed they became. By the time Darian got him out of the locker, Kaylee's markings were strobing so fast and so faint they looked like a dying signal. "Hey," Darian said, because it was the only word that came to him. "Hey, I've got you." Kaylee's did not understand English yet. He would, later. The translator implant the relief station fitted him with 3 days afterward saw to that. But in the moment, he understood nothing except that he had been ripped out of the dark, noisy, safe place where his pulse mother had put him, and that she had not come back for him, and that everyone around him sounded like static and smelled like ozone and machine oil instead of like home. Darian did not know any of the Valkyrie customs for comforting a cub. He did not know that you were supposed to dim the lights and hum at a frequency below 40 Hz, the way a pulse mother would. He did not know that direct eye contact was considered an aggressive display, or that physical touch from outside the birth clutch was, under normal circumstances, deeply taboo. He did not know any of that. He just sat down on the floor of the recovery bay, because the cub was clearly not going to be picked up, and made himself smaller, and said, in the low, steady voice he used to use on his own kid sister when she was small and scared of thunderstorms back on a planet 400 light-years away. "It's okay. I know it's loud. I know everything's wrong right now. You don't have to do anything. I'm just gonna sit here." And he sat there. For 2 hours. Kaylee's markings did not stop strobing. But somewhere in the second hour, the rhythm slowed. Not because Darian had done anything a Valkyrie pulse mother would recognize, he hadn't dimmed the lights, hadn't hummed at the right frequency, hadn't done a single one of the dozen culturally specific things that were supposed to matter. He had simply stayed. He had not left. He had not looked away when the light patterns turned ugly and erratic, the Valkyrie equivalent of sobbing, and he had not flinched, and he had not tried to fix it, and he had not gone to fetch someone more qualified. He had just stayed. 3 weeks later, Kaylee's had a translator implant, a cot in the station's small dependence wing, and an unofficial habit of following Darian Voss around every shift like a particularly luminous shadow. The station's xenopsych officer, a Threener woman named Idril Voss, no relation who had spent 11 years studying Valkyrie grief behavior, had tried, gently, to explain to Darian why this was strange. Valkyrie cubs imprint on their pulse mother in the first hour after birth, she told him over cold station coffee. After that, they don't bond. Not like this. Not with strangers, and never, never, with a different species. There's no biological pathway for it. I've read 40 years of literature on Valkyrie developmental psychology, and there is no mechanism by which what's happening with that boy should be possible. "Okay," Darian said, not really listening, because Kaylee's was visible through the observation window, sitting cross-legged on the floor of the rec room, methodically failing to beat a station maintenance bot at a game of stacking blocks, his markings cycling lazy gold and green, the Valkyrie color pattern Idril had told him once, for contentment. "It's not okay," Idril said. "It's impossible. I need you to understand that. By every metric I have, that cub should not be attached to you." He should be catatonic, or feral, or fixated on the locker he was pulled from. He should not be laughing at your jokes in a language he's had for 19 days. Darian shrugged. Maybe nobody told him it was impossible. It was Kaylee's himself who said it, eventually, the line that the relief station's social worker would later quote, half amused and half bewildered, in her incident report. The line that would make its way into Idrill's eventual paper on cross-species attachment anomalies, footnoted forever as patient statement, verbatim, translator assisted. It happened on a bad night. Kaylee's had a bad night every so often, even 3 months out, a nightmare, or a flicker of memory, or just the accumulated weight of being 6 years old and orphaned and 400 light-years from anything that had ever made sense. He'd come find Darian in the maintenance bay at 0300 station time, markings strobing that frantic distress blue again, and Darian had done what he always did, sat down on the floor, made himself small, didn't reach for the kid, just stayed. It took less time than it used to. 40 minutes, maybe, instead of 2 hours. The blue slowed. Steadied. Shifted, gradually, towards something calmer. Better? Darian asked. Kaylee's nodded, the human gesture he'd picked up and now used more than the Valkyrie head tilt that meant the same thing. He scooted closer, another human habit, that one, since Valkyrie cubs were supposed to maintain distance from anyone outside the birth clutch, and leaned against Darian's side, which by every paper Idrill had ever written should have been a sensory aversion response and instead looked, for all the world, like a kid leaning on someone he trusted. Idrill says this isn't supposed to happen, Kaylee said. His translator rendered the Valkyrie clicks and hums into flat, careful English, but Darian had learned to hear the kid's actual tone underneath it, and right now it was thoughtful, a little baffled, the way Kaylee's got when he was turning a new idea over and over like a strange rock he'd found. Yeah? Darian said. What's not supposed to happen? Me. Liking you. Trusting you. Kaylee's markings pulsed once, gold threading through the fading blue. She says Valkyrie cubs only bond to their pulse mother. She says there's no, he paused, hunting for the translated word, no pathway. For a cub to feel safe with someone who isn't clutch. She has read 40 years of papers and none of them say this can happen. Huh, Darian said. You're not Valkyrie. You don't glow. You don't hum at the right frequency, you held me wrong the first time, you still don't dim the lights when I'm upset even though I've told you 4 times that it would help. Kaylee's tilted his head up, and his marking pattern did something Darian had never quite been able to translate, somewhere between a frown and a smile. You did everything wrong. According to Idrill, every single thing. And it worked anyway. He shook his head slowly, the gesture entirely human now, entirely his own. This is simply impossible, Kaylee said. Darian huffed out something that was almost a laugh, and put an arm around the kid, wrong, by every Valkyrie protocol, comforting anyway, and looked out the maintenance bay's small viewport at the slow wheel of unfamiliar stars. Yeah, he said. Good thing nobody told us that before we tried it. Kaylee's marking settled, finally, into the slow gold-green pulse of something that, in no species textbook, but in every way that mattered, looked exactly like home.